Is it open? I think it's open. Mazai. Come, lovey. Mazai. So we just left. Watch the car, baby. So we just left Harold Cressy High School, and we spoke to Mr. Klaassen, Mr. Isaacs, the president. We just left Harold Cressy High School. We spoke to Mr. Klaassen, Mr. Isaacs, the principal, and to Malika, Ms. Hendricks, one of the teachers. Awesome, amazing people that made me feel so at home when I walked in, which is awesome. And alhamdulillah, it looks like we have our first school talk for Monday morning. Really looking forward to it, waiting for the confirmation, keep fingers crossed. Looking forward to speaking to these kids, to the matriculants on Monday. Okay. We just need to set up the thingy. Yeah. No?
We will bring the stuff down now.
Come, love it.
The board and stuff.
Okay.
My class.
Done a walk through this?
No, this is first time. Yeah.
Obviously the building is quite old.
Yeah.
Very old. Unfortunately, because it is considered a heritage site,
Right.
because of its importance during apartheid, we haven't been able to do many changes with the exterior.
Oh, right,
So even
right.
for the inside of the classrooms, you'll see it's still very dated.
Wow.
We've only recently been able to acquire some benches and some tables and, just update our basketball courts. But otherwise, the structure has remained the same since
So do you know?
inception.
Do you know much about what that heritage is from?
So this was the first coloured school that was opened here in Cape Town.
Wow.
So I don't know. It was named after Harold Cressy himself, who was
Right.
also the first coloured principal
Wow.
during the apartheid era. So it has a very rich history in terms of apartheid and what it preached and things like that. So between Harold Cressy and Trafalgar High School,
Yes.
we essentially housed the students of District 6 and the
Wow.
Blue Cap community. Everywhere else is obviously for white students only. So
Wow.
yeah, essentially it's what it's, you wouldn't know. So this is like home of apartheid.
Wow.
This wall also, it obviously wasn't here. This is
Yeah,
something
you
that
can
our
see us,
alumni.
yeah.
So because a lot of the students, or the previous students rather, were so keen on giving back to the school, this was donated through them. This
Wow.
wall. So
Awesome, man.
yeah, no, lots of
Awesome.
apartheid.
That's some crazy history. And it's funny to think. No, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. I was really just reaching out,
Yes.
looking for schools. But this is amazing that this is actually the
you
first.
chose very well. So yeah, no, even you can Google Harold Cressy.
Yes,
There's
yes.
quite a bit of history behind the school. I'm glad I
Wow.
could share that with you.
Awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah. How was the weekend? I saw you guys were quite busy.
Yo, can I tell you, Malika,
you went
we
to the
were
Chrysalis
so
Academy.
yes. So I actually went to the Chrysalis Academy many years ago.
Me too. I was also, but it was very brief. It was for a leadership course.
Okay, what?
So
That's
I'm quite
crazy. That's crazy.
Hot boy.
It was, yeah. It really was. So, do you have like a screen or something that I can
I'm
put
going to just, I
Okay.
spoke to them about it. I just
Okay.
need to confirm that they do that for you quickly.
Okay.
Because I know you said you wanted to show me.
Yes. Stands on the side that you could sit on, like, what do you call it? Yeah, stands that you could sit there on the side and cheer and whatever. And it looked very similar to this actually. Did you see the quote on the wall? To the one who is willing, nothing is difficult. That's class. So I've been living in South Korea for about 1.5 years now. But in the time that I've been living there, I've had the opportunity to see the stark difference in quality of life between what we live here in South Africa and the way that they live there on that side. Now, before we get into the presentation, or before we get into talking about South Korea, I have a question for you guys. You guys are all in matric, right? Right. So I want to know, how many of you, put up your hand, know what you want to do next year? Put up your hand if you know for sure what you want to do next year. Right. So I like the honesty. I like the fact that there are some hands that are down. Okay, we're going to get to those now. Can I ask you, you say you know what you want to do next year, right?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what you want to do next year.
So I want to go to studies for molecular. She made me forget molecular biology, so that eventually I can become a forensic scientist.
Forensic scientist, okay? Study marketing. Okay, so she wants to study marketing. Okay, so this is really important, guys, because you need to understand, once you leave the school, all the buffers that you have had to the challenges of the reality of life outside are going to disappear the first step you take out of this high school at the end of this year. And my objective, the reason why I'm here today, is because I want to make sure that as best as I can, I want to prepare you for what's waiting for you outside, but I also want to give you a bit more perspective so that you can see your life and your future in relation to what the world is like outside. When I left matric, I matriculated a long time ago, but when I left matric, I was in the same boat as a lot of you who didn't put up your hands. I had no idea what I was going to do after school. I came from a family that didn't really speak about education. There were no conversations at the supper table about what I'm going to study after I leave school, what I'm going to be after I leave school. And so when I left school, I didn't go and study. I started working in retail stores, Total Sports, Cape Union Mart, Sports Scene. And I thought that when I leave school, if I don't study and I start working immediately, every year, my salary will increase. And so after 5, 10 years, maybe I'll actually have a decent salary because now I'll have a good couple of years of experience behind my name. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. What do you guys know about South Korea? What's your favorite singing group from South Korea? BTS, right? So we know South Korea because of their K-pop and because of their K-dramas, right? Azai, yes, right. And there's a soccer player who plays for Tottenham as well. Oh, by the way, Ji-sung Park used to play for Man United. Azai, right. So thus, if you look at these pictures that you are looking at is Seoul on the far left. On the right of that is also part of Seoul. That's like an inner city town where you have a lot of restaurants and stuff, and then that's like some of the things that they like to eat. Right, so that's what we know about South Korea. And the thing is, a lot of us now recently are even wanting to know what it would be like to visit South Korea. We want to see what it's like, and the reason we want to see what it's like is because of what we see through K-pop and through K-dramas. The life looks amazing in South Korea, right? Quality of life. So again, this is what Seoul looks like today. But there is a history behind South Korea that most of us have no idea about. We do not know the struggle that South Korea went through to become this. And that's what we're going to touch on today, because what I want to show you is that despite the circumstances that you come from, it does not have to determine what your future is going to be. That is based on the decisions that you will make once you leave the school. So this tower in this picture, it's called Lotte Tower. Lotte is one of the biggest companies in South Korea. For my wife's birthday last year, we went to Seoul, and they have an amusement park in that area. It's called Lotte World. Lotte World. Amazing amusement park. It kind of feels like a Disney vibe almost. In terms of the quality of their infrastructure that they have there, everything feels like it's 5-star. But where did Seoul come from? This was the Korean War. This happened between 1950 and 1952. This was a war between North Korea and South Korea. The same Seoul that you were looking at now, that is what Seoul looked like in the 1950s. That's how they lived. There are pictures that we see today happening somewhere around the world that kind of look like this also. But that is exactly in Seoul. The same Seoul you were looking at the pictures of just a slide before. During this war, food was so scarce that the one thing that people used to eat the most was sweet potato. Now, sweet potato is the kind of thing that grows very easily, regardless of what terrain you live in. So they survived off of eating things like sweet potato because they literally had nothing else. Today, sweet potato has become so important to their culture that they have sweet potato in everything. Milkshakes, smoothies, bubble tea, even pizza. You can have a pizza that has sweet potato in the crust. That's how much they love sweet potato, but it's because of the heritage that it comes with. It's the history that it comes with. So imagine your family that you go home to every day now, in the middle of a war like that, your family that you go home to, that you see every day, is now split from you, and you never have the opportunity to go and see them again. In fact, it's so bad that until today, there are people, there's a program that they have where they try to reconnect families from North Korea and South Korea, but it's only a meeting for a day. And after that day, whoever's from South Korea goes back to South Korea, whoever's from North Korea goes back to North Korea, and you never see that family members again. There have been stories of mothers who are now in their 90s, who recently in 2019 got to see their son, who's now in his 70s. And they only met for that one day. So the question is, how did they go from that to this? Hey! Yes! The way that they did it
The way that they did it focused on two things: education and economic development. Education and economic development. South Korea chose about 4 companies: Samsung, Hyundai, Kia. I can't remember what the third one is. I think it's SK Energy. And what they did was the government funded these businesses to turn them into global enterprises that would make money for South Korea. Because the interesting thing that's very different from South Korea and South Africa is we have gold, platinum, all these other natural resources that we are selling to the rest of the world, and South Korea has none of that. So now imagine, 1952, you come out of the Korean War, you are literally one of the poorest countries in the world. How do you turn a country around that looks like you saw into what it is today when you have nothing to offer the rest of the world? That's why they focused on education. Do we need a degree? So what that says at the top there is in South Korea, between the age of 25 and 34, 70% of that entire population have a tertiary education, which doesn't necessarily mean a degree. It means anything, a diploma, some other kind of certificate, a master's, a doctorate. 70% of that entire population has a degree. Versus 13% in South Africa. Now you guys are laughing about it. We think that it's funny, but we do not realize the correlation, the relationship between education and income. Our sister over there said one of the things that she's thinking about is when you leave school, what am I going to do that's going to earn me a decent income so that I can live a decent life after I leave school? So that I can get out of the community that I'm living in now, where things are extremely difficult, where my parents are constantly arguing and fighting because bills are not being paid. We have to choose between putting bread on the table and putting the lights on. We have to choose between paying the rent and paying for the car. This is the reality of the communities that we come from. So once you realize the relationship between education and income, you have no excuse to change your situation. Right? So we're going to play a quick game. Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put 2 pictures on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to choose which one you want. Okay? If you look at the house, you have a 2-bedroom apartment in Rondebosch for 1.8 million. You have a 3-bedroom house in Grassy Park for 1.6 million. Which one are you taking? 3-bedroom in Grassy Park. What are you taking? A 2-bedroom. Anyone this side, what are you taking? The Grassy Park. Okay, right. So whatever you picked, whatever one you picked, I want you to keep that in your mind, right? Okay. What is the average price of a property in the Western Cape today? 1.5. The average price of a property in the city that you live in is 1.5 million. And only 5% of families in Cape Town can afford that price. 5% of families in Cape Town can afford a house for 1.5 million. Do you understand the correlation between education and income? Right? Pick a car, you've got a Polo 1.6 for 149,000. You got a BMW 320M Sport with 249. BM, right. Polo. Oh yeah. BM, right. Okay, so prices, keep it in mind. 250,000 for the BM, 150,000 for the Polo. What do you think is the average salary in South Africa? Your hand is up. Say it louder. 5,000. Okay, 5,000. 7,000. 10,000. Okay, right. The average salary in South Africa is 26,000 rand a month. That doesn't sound right? I can see, I like the expression you have on your face. It doesn't sound right. How is it possible that the average salary is 26,000 rand a month? The reason why the average salary is 26,000 rand a month is because South Africa is the most unequal income country in the world, which means that the 1% in South Africa are earning so much money that their income alone is pushing that average all the way up to 26,000 rand a month. But 75% of South Africans go home with 5,800 rand a month or less. 75% of South Africans in our country go home with 5,800 rand a month or less. Can you see the relationship between education and income? Now, let's look at these expenses. If you chose the house, the 2-bedroom apartment in Rondebosch, this is your one on the right-hand side, and your BMW, that's your one on the right-hand side. So all of these are your monthly expenses that you would need to be able to sustain that lifestyle. Your bond is 19,000 rand a month. Your car is 5,000 rand a month. I added water, electricity, all those other things, and I made those numbers the same, just so that you can see the difference. But your total expenses for the end of the month is 40,050 rand a month. And if you take the other side, 36,050 rand a month. That's the slightly cheaper option. These numbers, ladies and gentlemen, are the reality of life that's waiting for you when you walk out of matric. Now remember, I told you, when I left matric, I went to go and work at Sports Scene, Total Sports. Can you guess what my salary was? Sure, I wish. Anywhere between, depending on whether you work as a casual or a permanent, you can earn anywhere between 3,500 rand a month to maybe 7,000 rand a month. Now you tell me, with those kind of numbers, waar gaat jy woon? Where are you going to live? What car are you going to drive? How are you going to entertain yourself? You know what we end up doing? Do you know what we end up doing? Those of us that are living on that salary, we end up burying ourselves in debt. We end up burying ourselves in debt. Because all I have is 7,000 to 8,000 rand a month. But if I go to the bank, I can go take out a loan for 50,000 rand, 70,000 rand, and maybe I can go buy a car on Facebook Marketplace. Not realizing that what I'm actually doing is just taking more money out of my pocket every month that I actually don't have. Why? Because we do not understand the relationship between education and income. Now, I told you the numbers earlier. This is just for you to see it visually. 75% goes home with 5,800 Rand a month. 3% of our entire population earns 63,000 Rand a month. And it's that 3% that they can live relatively comfortable on those monthly expenses that we looked at earlier. Does that make sense? Do you see how difficult it becomes when we are unwilling to make the sacrifices to change our lives? Now remember, I told you in South Korea, 70% have a tertiary education. There is no one in South Korea that is holding a gun to a child's head to force them to go to school. In South Korea, education is a culture. It is such a deeply entrenched culture in their communities that kids go to school at 9 o'clock in the morning and they come home at 10 o'clock at night. They go to school from 9 o'clock in the morning, their normal school ends at about 2 o'clock. After that, they go to something called a Hagwon, which is kind of like tuition, but it's like a full syllabus. Maths, science, history, whatever other subjects, even sports. But you will see 12-year-old children walking home at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night with their baggies on. Because education is a culture in their communities. Now let me show you guys something that's very scary. Last year, your matriculants all wrote exams, right? Your matriculants of last year, they all wrote the exams and they passed. How many people passed last year, do you know? Huh? No, I'm not talking about the percentage, I'm talking about the number of students. How many matriculants passed last year, do you know? 600,000 matriculants passed last year, right? But how many students started in grade 1 together with those matriculants? 1.2 million kids started grade 1, but only 600,000 had a matric certificate at the end of last year. And one of the number one reasons why, one was lack of income and they had to go and find a job. But number 2, which really shocked me, was a complete disinterest in education. This is a culture that we have in our communities, guys. Many of you who are sitting here, in your homes, it's probably very similar. Your parents don't really talk to you about education because your parents are too busy trying to survive themselves and put food on the table for you to eat and to make sure that you can get to school, because they are suffering in the same cycle that I'm now trying to prevent you from going down. So what we need to try to do is learn how to break that cycle. The reality, guys, is that if you look at the communities that you come from and you make the effort to understand the history of why you are where you are, meaning, why do you live in your neighborhood? Why do you live there? There's a very specific reason why you guys live in the communities that you live. And I'm going to touch on it very simply. Any of you heard of something called the Group Areas Act? All right. The Group Areas Act of 1950 did what? It segregated all of you into colors and said, you go and live in Nyanga, you go and live in Kailicha, you go and live in Mitchell's Plain, you go and live in Menenberg. Now, why am I telling you that understanding this history is important? Because there are people in this city and in this country. I am a TikToker. I create educational content because I'm thinking about every one of you, and I'm remembering that when I was sitting in your seat, I had nobody to show me these things and to teach me what I needed to know so that I could make better decisions at your age. I realized that it was my responsibility to take care of my own life. My parents didn't owe me anything. My father didn't owe me anything. By the way, I didn't meet my biological father until I was 20 years old. I was raised by my mother and my stepfather. And I'm grateful. My stepfather did a lot of amazing things for me that a lot of fathers don't even do for their own sons. But I blame the fact that my biological father didn't care about me. That's what I thought. That's why my life is the way that it is. But the reality is, none of you, when you were born, were given a certificate that said your life was going to be easy. None of you were given a certificate to say, we're going to give you this, you're going to get this at this age, you're going to get that at that age. But there are people, like on social media, who have all of those things very easy. And so we sit on TikTok and on Instagram scrolling, looking at their lives, comparing ourselves to them. When in reality, what we need to be doing is claiming the difficulty that we come from. Claim that as your own and say, yes, I come from a community that suckles, man. I come from a community where watching my mother cry every couple of months because bills are not being paid, and it's because she's fighting with me and my siblings and my father. I come from a reality where that happens every day. I come from a reality where it's not uncommon to know a friend or a neighbor that loses his life to substance abuse or to gangsterism. Claim that reality. And when you claim it, do something with it so that when you become a winner, and I want to swear, that no one can disrespect you. Because I can tell you, as a TikToker who speaks about communities of color, I watch in my comment section how people say things about us communities of color that it really rubs me up the wrong way, because unfortunately, as much as I hate the things that they say about us, the choices we make and the lifestyle that we choose feeds into the narratives that they say about us. And until we are willing to make the effort to change that, that will perpetuate. The same struggles that you see your parents going through today, you will sit 20 years from now going through exactly the same things. Unless you choose to understand the correlation between education and income. And the thing is, nothing stops any one of you from making that possible. When I was in matric, I was an E&D student. But once I realized that my life was my responsibility only, I became addicted to the process of progress. Because I understood the reason why somebody who works at sports team earns 6,000 or 7,000 rand a month, and a doctor earns 50 or 60,000 rand a month or more, is because of the value that they bring to the market. It's easy for anybody to stand in a store and show and point at a t-shirt, but try to do a surgery. That is value. So if you want to make sure that you earn a decent income, make sure that you master a skill that adds value to your market. There's so much more that I want to say. We don't have much more time. I'm going to end off there, but I want to ask you guys, if you have any questions whatsoever, whether it's about my life, whether it's about what you want to do after you leave school, or anything related to the topic that we spoke about today, please feel free to ask. Because here's the thing, this conversation, this might just spark something in the back of your mind, but the reality is this isn't enough. What we need is to create programs that foster the energy that comes out of sitting in something like this, so that you can maintain and drive that energy forward and not quit on whatever you decide or thinking about doing right now. So there's some of you that's thinking now, you know what, maybe I should go to university, or maybe I should go to a college. How do we make sure that that feeling you have now continues right through and you don't end up quitting along the way? Does that make sense? It's been an hour already. I want to thank you guys.
I don't know about you guys, but I definitely wish that I'd had this when I was in matric. I wish that somebody had come and told me about these realities waiting for us after school. That this is what cost of living really meant. I probably would have made better choices. I probably would have studied a lot early on in my life. I probably would have been a lot further along in my life. But this is exactly what we are trying to prepare them for. So whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, these are the stories that they need to hear. These are the conversations that we need to be having with them, so that maybe, just maybe, they can do it better than we did. And for any youngsters who are watching this, whatever information you found was valuable, grab onto it, hold on to it tightly, don't let it go, and apply it in your life. That's what's most important.
Can you speak it?
Can you speak? To be honest with you, I don't learn the language, and the reason why is because we don't actually plan on staying there forever. Japan is like very close. It's literally a boat ride away. It's very nice. Very, very nice. Only problem though is they have some crazy earthquakes at Japan.
We South Africans, we don't do those things.
What did you think of today's talk?
I thought the talk was very helpful. I think it gave a lot of the students insight of how the expenses, where they come from, and what they can expect depending on where they see themselves in the next maybe 20 years.
Right.
I thought today's talk was really great, and I kind of got motivation because of the stats in South Africa and like how we can probably increase it more of the rate, because we must, as you said, you must focus on education, not income. So I thought the talk was great.
I think today's talk was, a calling to everyone. I think it's deeper than what we see in the physical realm. I think it's very spiritual because sometimes we have these questions in our hearts, in our minds, we don't know how to answer. So when you have an open communication, we have insights, we unlock levels that we don't know, you know. So yeah, I think it was just something about it that it will last the lifetime. Even if you guys are not here, even if there's just, you know, I don't think we've had this for ourselves in a long time. So it was definitely something to hold on to. It removed certain fears, questions, you know, and while we have the time and the opportunity right now, that's what we should focus on. And I think that's very amazing.
If you think about what's happening in your communities, if you think about what's happening with you guys being in matric now, what else do you think is needed either in a talk like this or something more than the talk that could add more value?
I think for the talk, maybe some people who've had experiences similar to those of the people you're giving the talk to could inspire them and show them that someone like them has made it. Yeah. And for outside the talk, maybe like online tutoring classes that would help them and further give them knowledge maybe.
What you can do is maybe find organization where people can just sit and talk more of what the talk was and like add on it.
I know that we cannot be everywhere at once, especially you guys. So obviously social media will be there to help us. At the same time, if you do have like any other people you work with, they can always visit schools and stuff like that. If anyone, I think having a guardian angel, maybe a physical one, it can help. At the same time,
like a mentor?
Yeah, a mentor, you know, that's a mentor. I also feel like maybe, you know, sometimes there are days we might not feel like it. You might feel like, oh, sometimes we always want to see results in 24 hours and all this and all that. So encourage us to also have journals and, you know, follow in our dreams, as Miss said, like, you know, we have these certain fears if I don't get it right today or this and that, you know, we're not meant to be perfect. So as time goes by, but what we have is what we got, and we don't have a lot of time in this world. So I think God sends angels in many different ways, shapes and forms. So yeah.